Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Just Believe podcast. Today, I'm truly honored to come across this young woman whose story is powerful, but not only just her story, just her efforts in life is super. She's just talented, like naturally talented. She's not only a musician, but she's also a actress, an author, and she has a golden heart. You also have a nonprofit organization as well that I noticed. The name of her book is called A Gift from Adversity. This young lady is Juri Love. How are you doing?
Good, Herbie. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I'm so honored to be here.
No problem, no problem. Thank you. Your story is outstanding. The stuff that I was reading, and not only just the stuff that I was reading, but the conversation that you and I was having, I was truly touched. And I was just like, wow, sometimes in life we don't realize that there are natural superheroes here. People think of superheroes as like, only in comic books, but you are. Whenever you feel comfortable, would you like to share some of your story?
Sure. So, my name is Juri Love. I'm originally from Japan, and I am a survivor of child sex abuse, domestic violence, bullying, and homelessness. And I recently published a book called A Gift from Adversity. And this was published last year. Well, the subtitle is Overcoming Sexual Abuse, Domestic Violence, Bullying, and Homelessness, A Gift from Adversity. And it's published by my publisher, Book Logics, in Atlanta, Georgia. And they've been wonderful. So I launched my book last year, October 20th, and all on Amazon, it became #1 new release in all 3 categories. And not only I'm an author, I'm also a journalist. I write for a local newspaper, the Sun Chronicle and the Factory Reporter. And then I am a musician, as you said. I'm a piano player and I sing. And I'm working on my album called Love Frequency. And I've nationally toured before. And I model, act. I just joined SAG. And I just did a big movie on Netflix. And it's coming out this year. I'm very excited with all the Hollywood mega giant stars. I don't know how I got the part, but me and my son actually got the part.
Nice.
And I'm a motivational speaker. I'm a Rotarian. I don't know if you're familiar with Rotary Club, but I'm also a recipient of Heroes Among Us from Boston Celtics, volunteerism from the New England Patriots, and the Paul Harris Fellow from the Rotary International. And I've done a ton of motivational speech gigs. And sometimes I just don't know what I'm doing. I have a podcast. I have side hustle, doing Lyft, Uber, DoorDash, whatever it takes, right? And then I'm a single mom too. So that's me. And then my website is jurilove, JURILOVE.com. And my Instagram is @JuriPanda. I don't have many followers on Instagram. So
Not yet. Don't worry. Soon you will.
Maybe.
You will. You will. You will.
Yes.
So you talk about the child abuse at like a young age. When did you realize, hold on, something's wrong. This is not right. Was it someone was it something that you felt internally, or did somebody say, hey, this is not supposed to happen? Because as kids, we are taught a certain thing.
That's a good question. I didn't realize that first of all, the word abuse really didn't come to me until maybe I was in 20s, because I didn't know what sexual abuse, like I didn't know what abuse was, because it was just so normal to me, and I didn't even put 2 and 2 together. And it wasn't education. There was no platform that people talked about in 80s in Japan, in the small rural town that I grew up. So I was getting beaten up or sexually abused. But by that time, between age 8 to 13, I had no idea what was going on. In a way, no, of course, when you are getting beaten up, you feel pain. but not necessarily that it's a term called abuse or maybe crime. I had no idea. But obviously it was painful. And then on top of that, the sexual abuse part, it was like 3 people in the household who violated me. And I thought it was kind of like a normal activity in a way, like, tickling game or something. But like, when you are touched in like private areas and stuff, obviously you're a human being, even if you're young, like you feel like a certain type of aroused. And I was introduced so early about some sexual inappropriate activities that I didn't know why I was like aroused. So like I just had no idea what was going on, absolutely no idea. But I knew that I have to like escape from the situation. um it was just getting escalated. Not only just the sexual abuse, but the physical abuse was getting so escalated to the point that I thought, if I don't do something about it, I think I would die. And then it was just the instinct, more like animal instinct. But I was 13.
Yeah.
So my parents got divorced when I was 8, but my mom was living in a different place. But I remember calling her. It's part of my book, but I remember calling her and telling her that I need to meet her. And then, I met up. I lied to my dad that, well, I kind of didn't lie. Basically, I was pretending that I'm going to like a volleyball club practice, but I took a train to meet up with her a little bit and then came back home at the normal time. So he had no idea. So I was planning escape, but I had no adult to help me except obviously my mom. But there's no advocacy group. There's no safe plan. All these things, the fancy things that I learned like recently, like in America. So it's a long answer, but I just didn't know, to be honest with
you. I'm sorry that you had to go through that, but I'm glad that you was wise enough to, okay, let me try to go somewhere safe, right? Like I got to trick my father and let me go to my mom, right? Like I'm going to find a way where he's not going to realize that I'm gone and like too long, but let me talk to my mom. And how was that like process with your mom? Was she like consulting you, letting you know, like, we're going to find a way to get you out of that situation?
Yeah, she was definitely supportive in a way that she went through the same situation. She's absolutely the victim of the domestic violence, and that's why she left. And I remember her getting beaten up by my dad, like growing up. And then I wrote that in my book too. Like I remember my youngest like memory of her getting beaten up, and then me like feeling useless, like absolutely like you know didn't know what to do to help her. And that was scary and frustrating. So she was definitely supportive.
That just warms my heart. It does, because the relationship of a child and a parent is so key, right? Like you want to go to them, and if something's wrong, you want to know like they're here to protect you. And I'm glad that she came to you with open arms, and shortly, but I would assume shortly but surely you was able to get out that situation. And then what happened after this?
So I started to live with my mom, but then when I maybe a year and a half later or so that I told her about the sexual abuse, and then her husband at the time um, took a night and then said, we decided that you made it up. And that broke my heart because nobody believed what I went through. And so I tried to kill myself. So it's part of my book, but I was holding knife, cutting my wrist, bleeding. And then my mom, for some reason, came home. She forgot something, and then she found me bleeding. And after that, she put me on medication. It didn't work. And then nobody really talked about PTSD back then.
Yeah.
maybe she thought I was selfish and crazy. I almost dropped out of high school, but there was something happened um, in my life that, well, it's in my book, Gift from Adversity, that I don't want to spoil way too much, but yeah, something happened, and I had some epiphany and a realization. Some event happened, and then basically I came to America with some program that I auditioned for, and then it kind of really changed my life course. But at the same time, when I came back to Japan after exchange program, long story short, I became homeless because my mom said I should be independent at age 18. So I was completely homeless in Tokyo.
That's unbelievable. How that is unbelievable. That's because I know like in America it's totally different. Like some parents are strict and be like, hey, at 18, you got to go to college or you're out. Or if you don't go to college, you have to go to the army, try to figure it out. To be a little hard to try to give their child some guidance. But then you have some parents that's just like, hey, you can stay as long as you need to figure out what you want to do in life, right? For me, like once I turned like 18, I was like, Mom, I'm out. I want to figure out life and understand who I am and what I want to become. Unfortunately, you had to go through something that seemed harsh. Now that you was homeless, did you figure out like, okay, let me figure out a plan, or did I have a friend to crash with or anything? Or you was just like, man, I have no connections here. I know it's in the book. Oh.
So what happened was I wrote some list of things in the chapter 2 process of what I did when I was homeless. But it was 24 hours restaurant, like Denny's, and then like I paid $100. No. I paid 100 yen, which is $1, like unlimited coffee. And I stayed there like between like 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. and there's like a no train. And then I stayed at the park. I stayed at my friend's house or like random guy. It was a mess. It was just a mess.
I'm glad you was able to pick yourself up, because look at the woman that you became today. Like it's unbelievable. You know?
Thank you. Yeah, but I found a job at the resort hotel. And then that provided shelter and food, and then I was able to work. So I was working from like 7 a.m. to like 11 p.m. every day, and serving 30 guests, like full course dinners. I learned how to clean, how to cook, and I had really nice meals provided. And then I saved money and made a down payment to rent my first kind of shady tiny apartment in Tokyo, outskirts of Tokyo. And then I had no money, Herbie, and I remember that I couldn't even afford a comforter. So I bought like a $30 sleeping bag, and I was sleeping in a sleeping bag in my apartment. And
It sounds like the college experience when you're like, okay, I don't have enough money for anything, but this is gonna do, because that's what I had to do. It was like,
yeah.
I can't afford a bed, but I'm just gonna get like this used foods on and just sleep on it and try to clean it up just to call. It was raggedy, but it was mine, but I felt comfortable with it. It was a place where I could lay my head. No, I definitely get that. Just fast forward just a little bit. As far as like now, you kind of sound like you got a little things together now. It's like, all right, I got a little place. It's not the best. Was the PSD still like happening, or was you like, I since I left that situation, was it gone, or it was still? Because I feel like when we're home by ourselves, there's certain demons that come out that we can't control or we may not know. So how was that once you was like home alone?
Are you talking about PTSD?
Yes,
You know,
like once you moved.
I I have to tell you, Herbie, I didn't know the term of PTSD until I came to America. And so I went to Berkeley College of Music after being homeless. I got a good job, and then I saved about $30,000, got a scholarship, and came to Boston. Um, and this is not in my book, but one of the semester I was really depressed, and then um, a school counselor told me that, Juri, you have PTSD. And I'm like, what is PTSD? And that was my introduction to PTSD. So maybe when I was homeless or when I was going through hardship in Japan, but nobody was talking about PTSD back then. But now, interestingly, in 2011, when the big earthquake happened, a lot of TV stations and people are starting to talk about PTSD. So instead of using a Japanese term, like, they actually introduced us, the Japanese media, like PTSD itself.
Yeah.
So interesting. So a lot of people were starting to recognize the word PTSD, but again, back then I had no idea panic attack or depression and PTSD. Those are the words that I learned later on. I mean, like, when I was growing up, I had no idea.
Yeah. Isn't it crazy? Because growing up, my trauma happened in high school, right? And as I'm originally from the Bronx, and as I leave to come to Tampa and try to figure life out, I was having crazy like things happening that I couldn't control. And it took me, like, I went to go see my doctor for a checkup, and I was just like, hey man, like, I don't know, I've been feeling sad or whatever. And they was talking about depression. I was like, yeah, I had a little bit of that, whatnot. And then he was talking about this term that I never heard of. I was like, a PT, what? A PT, what? What is that? And he was telling me about it. And he was like, it sounds like you're going through that. Have you ever looked into like being on any meds to help you with that? And before I can answer, I'm not even lying to you, like, he was already filling out a prescription for me. I was just like, nah, dude, nah, like, I don't think it's that bad. But then I learned natural coping methods to actually help me overcome that trauma, which was so thankfully I learned those natural coping methods. But now that you're in America and you are doing Berkeley College, which is like the highest of the high, like everybody who loves music wants to go there. How was that process, like trying to get acclimated and get your foot in the door into like music or anything like that?
Yeah, so I was taking a private piano lesson before. So I took a scholarship tour in Tokyo, and then I was given partial scholarship to come to Berkeley while I was in Japan. And then when I came to America and I started Berkeley College of Music, um, it was just surreal. It was just living my dream. It was incredible. I wish I could kind of go back to Berkeley life. It was so amazing. There are so many amazing musicians from all over the world, and I made so many friends from all over the world who are so passionate about music. And I felt kind of alone in Japan. Like, I didn't have way too many musician friends. But now I'm like 100%, 200% surrounded by these talented musicians, and it was heavenly. And I slept like maybe 2 to 4 hours every day, and which discipline actually continues for coming 20 years after. But we were like recording, we are rehearsing, we're practicing, and shows and like classes and but the oldest assignment was like so much fun, like say like film scoring class, or like contemporary writing like class, like production class. It was so much fun, so much fun. And I was just, and then still like I have so many friends from Berkeley College of Music that I'm in touch with. And then um and right now I'm working on my album called Love Frequency, which is really dope. And some of the musicians that I collaborate with from Berkeley College of Music. And actually two of my friends are from my first semester of Berkeley. And then one is in Finland, Parity, who's a bass player, and one is Buffalo, Joe Gritty. And then we were in the same, I don't know if we had a class together, but we were in the same semester. We were doing a show together. I forced them to be in my band. And it was so much fun. And then teachers were like phenomenal. Like all the Berkeley teachers were like, I'm still in touch with some teachers, the staff. They were just so lovely, and they're so passionate. And then obviously they're incredible musicians. And I learned Oh my gosh, so much from
This sounds like this was your healing therapy that you needed.
it's you know what, Harry? It wasn't like a healing process. It was just like um living in my dream because you know what? I saved my money and I worked really hard to go to Berkeley and I didn't buy any like fancy clothes or like went out to party or anything. I just strictly worked, saved money, and it came to Berkeley. So it was really dream come true. So I was like living in my dream every day. So it wasn't even like a healing. It was just like my super life, and it was just like living in my dream. I was so happy. I was so happy every day.
Oh, I can imagine. I can imagine. I love music. And I was trying to do the like music, the music producing thing, like right. I had like Logic, I had the machine, I had all this other stuff for the keyboard, and I wanted to make beats, and like become a producer and eventually learn how to like play the piano. And for some reason, I kept having blockage, right? Like crazy blockage. I couldn't perform the way I wanted to, and it never dawned on me that the trauma that I was carrying, because I was hiding it so well, right? I was depressed for 10 years. Most of my close friends had no ideas. So when I was home and trying to practice, I kept getting frustrated and I couldn't see the music the way I wanted to, right? Like I couldn't see it. And then later on, right after my breakdown and speaking to a psychiatrist, they was like, hey, the reason why you couldn't perform the way you wanted music is not because like you're not good at it. It's the trauma that you had in the past. It was finally coming out. So the thing that you really want, you have to learn how to overcome this. And luckily, I was brave enough to sit down and figure out the triggers and overcome that. But I love hearing the fact that you was able to chase your dreams and not only chase your dreams, but become like that star that you are, like, hey, this is what I want to do. I want to sit down and I actually want to be around people who speak my language as far as music, because music is the most universal language of them all. No matter what, I can put down whatever notes on the music sheet, and if you're a musician, you can play it with no problem, right? It's just something about music that brings joy out of people that I love. That's why I was like, man, I want to produce beats because I want to make people happy. I want to make them feel how I feel deep down inside. This is outstanding. So after the college life, what happened? Like, did you try to figure out, okay, what's next? Like, should I open up my own studio? Should I join like a sort of band? Because you mentioned that you had a band earlier.
Yeah, so my senior year at Berklee College of Music was 2001, September to December, and then that 9/11 happened, and I felt like the world got upside down, and then I remember like feeling really compelled to do something impactful, and I think everybody else was too. And then so I started community service, and I started a nonprofit after I graduated, and it's called Genial Voices. And then I got my 501c3. And then what happened was, Herbie, I was reading a book in Japanese, and I wrote a paragraph about a guy who taught journalism in the detention program in LA. And that was like a thunderbolt in my spine that, oh my gosh, that's so crazy, like amazing that I wanted to do something like that. So, and I thought about like the jail cell, and I thought about the kids who are like kind of locked up, and then like, how like the music production can escape their mind to something else. And then that was my original idea. And then I started the Boys and Girls Club. Um, and then I eventually moved to the juvenile program, detention program. So I ran it for about 12 years, and I closed it. A lot of things happened, but along the way, at some point, we were providing free music lessons in 4 different detention programs in Greater Boston area, Massachusetts. And then at one point, I was actually a full-time teacher at the maximum security, and I was teaching blood and crips and back and forth. So it was very intense experience, and a lot of times what I learned was So before I go into details about Genuine Voices, and along with that, I was teaching music. I was playing piano for Berkeley's voice department as an accompanist, and at one point I was on national tour with the singer from the B50s to B52's Kate Pearson, and then I was singing background vocals, and then had two keyboards and melodica. Was absolutely highlight of my rock star life. And then so but I was always like teaching music and doing a non-profit musical theater. I've done some musical director gig, and wedding, GB band, like rock band, anything. Anything that came. Like I remember playing at the wine store for opening, or like some political events, like background music, and just anything that pays anything in music
Yeah.
area. Like I've done everything basically. Yeah. So then, but speaking of the nonprofit, like obviously I never ran nonprofit in my life, so it was definitely trial and error, and finding the ways along the way. But I've had, I would say, over a couple hundred volunteers throughout the years, and then from all over America and all over, like some people are from different countries, and then I was invited to many different conferences and events to talk about my work. And at one point, I was in Rome, Italy, on a panel discussion of with the professors from South Australian University. And so throughout the nonprofit, I have met so many incredible people and so many incredible volunteers, interns, board members, and any community organizations who had supported our mission. So I'm very grateful, and I learned so much from it.
Oh yeah, yeah. What you're doing, seriously, it's impacting people's lives in a positive manner. Me, I'm a board member of a nonprofit organization as well that give back to students who spread suicide prevention, right? And it's something that's powerful. I love the fact that the younger generation knows about the language and how serious mental health is and suicide prevention is, and that they're doing their part to spread awareness. When I was in high school, nobody was talking about that. There was like no numbers. There was no hard conversations about, hey, depression. I had to look up depression in a encyclopedia to understand what it was, because I never heard of it, right? Being in the urban situation, living in an urban situation, therapists, like you talk about seeing a therapist, people was laughing at you. So for you to sit there and turn your pain into joy to other people's lives to help them out is phenomenal. Like honestly, it's phenomenal. And I love the fact that you are so brave to sit there, not only share your story, but actually like write about it just to help someone else out. Shows you the type of superhero that you are, because it's hard and it's difficult, because some people in the world may judge you and be like, oh, she's making it up, or oh, he's making it up. And for you to be like, no, I'm not. This is my pain. People go through this. Let's actually talk about this. So we can prevent this from happening to someone else, daughter, wife, child, whomever. And and I love it. Like I love how brave that you are, to be honest. And it's inspired me to like, okay, let me go out there and tell my story a lot more, and actually use my voice, my platform, to get other people to share their stories. So these hard conversations, quote unquote, is just conversations.
Yes, absolutely. And I appreciate you having me on your show, because again, like, this is a hard topic to talk about. And then I remember specifically, this is not in my book, but I remember specifically talking to my publisher, BookLogix. They have been just phenomenal. And when I was having a conversation, the first time when my publisher called me and they gave me the publishing deal, she was asking me, so Juri, what do you want to do with your book? And I remember specifically telling her, well, I want to go on a book tour, and then the pandemic hit, so that didn't happen. But then I want to promote my book in a way that I want to be part of Me Too movement. And then also I want to create a safe platform that people can start a dialogue after reading my book and just talk about it. And also have a social pressure and notion about awareness and how it can really mess up somebody's life after the sexual abuse. Like I was suicidal and then, depressed, PTSD, all that stuff. Not just the actual event that happened to somebody, but the long-term, lifelong effect that's really, that can destroy somebody's potential, like life, everything. So I told my publisher, each perpetrator carries 6 victims according to the hard data, that when you focus on victims, it's way too many of us. But when you focus on perpetrator, that's like 1/6, right? So what would you do? Like, how can you prevent this?
Yes.
And part of the Genuine Voices work was all these boys who can potentially be like my father or more like violent, that we wanted to heal. We wanted to show them how they can behave differently through implementing self-confidence, sense of ownership through music. So that was really our mission, to prevent the crime, future crime, by changing or introducing inner strength. So I just want people to have this safe place to talk about depression, like, suicidal thoughts, and, PTSD, sexual abuse, domestic violence. Those are hard things to talk about, but at the same time, it can start with the conversation. It can start with a platform like what we are doing right now. For somebody to just come out and then say, oh, this is what happened. I can give you a very tangible example. So I was invited as a motivational speaker, and then it wasn't like a large audience, but after my speech was done, this man came up to me and then he confided me that he was also a sexual abuse victim, and then so were his siblings. And he said he never really told anyone except me. And, there are maybe 2 or 3, unfortunately, people who came up to me that they were sexually abused from their parents, like me. And, like, even, like, today I was talking to somebody and then she shared something. And then I was invited to a different, conference and then different places after I published my book. But not only that, like, personally, I've gotten a lot of messages from people that I'm also a victim, which I had no idea that he was or she was. And so in a way that it's a healing process, that not only going to the counselor, but speaking to your friend and opening up about, what you're going through. And then some people do get it, some people don't get it, but that doesn't mean that they are supportive or unsupportive. They just sometimes don't know what to do with
they don't know how to handle it.
No, not at all. And, sometimes people get overwhelmed by sharing way too much information. And then sometimes I feel like talking to a counselor, like, can be like really, really traumatic too. And then sometimes, like, talking to the counselor, like, they are on clock, on job. So even if you are like in the middle of like intense story, if they have like another client, they have to cut your story and then go. And you felt like
I'm finally opening it up, and now you're like, all right, your hour's up. Yeah.
So sometimes counseling can be, like, to be honest with you, traumatic. So I just really appreciate you having this platform and letting me speak about it. And then I heard a couple of your talks on Instagram, and I think it's really brave of you. And then I think it's really important for us victims or like survivors to have a place that people can really recognize, not just talk about it, but to recognize how sometimes the first step is to recognize that you're depressed. the sometimes first step is to recognize like something happened to you. And sometimes when you are abused so heavily, like I said to you, that I didn't even know the word abuse until later in life. Like sometimes when you are in the middle of shit, that you don't really know what the heck is going on, and that is scary. And that is preventable by education. I don't know if you heard of Darkness to Light. So Darkness to Light has a website that you can actually pay $25 to get the certification of the training. So which I thought it was empowering experience because there was a section about teaching your child like genitorial part, like private part as is, like, penis or vagina, using those words are so important, just like nose and mouth, and just, using those terms can prevent the sexual crime, which I have no idea why, because there was a case in the video training. It was saying like, some of the kindergarten girl was complaining the teacher, my dad ate my cookie, because he was teaching her vagina as cookie. So then, she didn't know. So what I'm saying is those kind of training like really opened my mind and then really empowered me in a way that I wish a lot of people take this training from Darkness to Light. The people can really watch each other's back, and especially for children's sake. So
I'll put it in the show notes so people can check it out, because I think that's powerful. With that, like, I'm grateful for even like you telling me that, like, being a father myself. I have 2 young kids, so like I think it's important for me to like tell them what they are. Like, hey, this is this part, this is this part. So this way, if my daughter comes to me and say, hey, such and such touched me in my private area, okay, now I know, this happened. Let me go to school and figure it out, and just spreading that awareness, because we all know kids, they don't lie, they tell the truth. Like, they're not trained, like, the older we get, we learn how to lie and hide, whatever, and get whatever we want. But as kids, it's like, if you ask a 5-year-old, how'd your breath, like, you blow in their face and make, oh, your breath stink. They tell you the truth. Like, yo, your breath stink. Like, so teaching kids the right, hey, this is a penis, this is a vagina. Let me know if somebody touched you there that's not supposed to touch you there. It's definitely powerful.
Yes, definitely. So, unfortunately, there's a history in our town that a lot of things happened. So then we implemented as a bylaw that all the town employees within 90 days of employment, they have to take Darkness to Light training. So
I love that.
Plumber or like electrician, like anybody who comes into public school buildings, they have to go through the training and then show the certificate, and otherwise they're not going to be employed. And that's very strong. So now a lot of towns who had history of this educator or leadership maybe assaulted children, they came to ask our town what we did, how we did. So now we're trying to pass from the state house legislators so that it can be statewide law that everybody who's coming to the educational setting buildings have to go through this training. And that's really powerful. And that's one of the preventative things, tangible things that anyone can do. Go to Darkness to Light website and then get trained.
No, I love it. I love it. Well, unfortunately, we have to go. But before we go, do you have a message to tell anybody that's going through a difficult time right now?
Sure. So I want to talk a little bit deep about void. So when you are abused as a child, and then when you have no anchor in your heart, and then you feel the void, you need to recognize that the void can't be outsourced, and it's hard. So my case is I went through like a lot of sex addiction, like relying on men and, or friends. And they sometimes like, stop talking to you or just, gone. And then you feel more void. But then you have to realize the void that's created from the childhood trauma or any sort of trauma, it can never be replaced because it's gone, and you can't keep searching and you keep getting like disappointed by it. And it's a deep thought that recently really happened to me, and I got like really bad last month. It was a lot of panic attack and depression, and even with all my accomplishments and achievements, these things can happen because the trauma is so deep. So my advice is that recognize the void, why it was created, and how deep it is, and why you should not outsource, and then you should really look inward. One of my integration coach told me that you are the love that you seek. That was really powerful. So really trying to find the strength in you, and then no matter what people say to you, or no matter what people has done to you, that's really not who you are. That's what happened to you. And you have your own life mission, and then you have your own strength, and just live one day at a time and be alive.
Thank you. Obviously, before we go, you know what you gotta do. You gotta promote this book one more time. Come on now.
Yes, A Gift from Adversity.
And tell them where they can find it at.
Well, you can find on Amazon or booklogics.com. And then the ebooks is available on Apple Store, and then also Amazon and Kindle.
This was phenomenal. Thank you for this. I am super hype. I love this episode. Until then, guys, we see you next time. Peace.